Welcome to episode 7 of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone who's out there live. We have 80 in there right now, and the last program ended with 250 with Paul McGillion. So thanks again to Paul. This episode, my hair is a mess. Sorry, folks. This episode, I have the honor and privilege of bringing in Mr. Dean Devlin, who was the co-writer and producer on the original Stargate feature film, one of my all-time movie heroes. So we're going to bring him in just a moment here. But before we get that started, I want to let you know how this is going to work. So after Dean comes in, I have a round of questions for him. The audience will be invited about midway through the show to submit their questions. You can do so right now in the YouTube live chat feed. And then at the end of the show, I have an amazing piece of fan art submitted by a Stargate fan. And it's this Stargate, I can't describe it. It's Stargate in a Japanese art style. It's absolutely beautiful, and I thought it would be perfect for this. So that's what we have. Before I get into bringing Dean into the show, if you'd like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes, which may happen all the time. This is key if you plan on watching the show live, and clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. All right, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Mr. Dean Devlin. Hello, sir.
Hi.
Dean, this is such a pleasure. You are one of the reasons why I wanted.
It's too early to say it's a pleasure yet. I think you should curb your enthusiasm a little bit and reserve that judgment for later in the show.
I mean, it's you are one of my sci-fi heroes, and you have always been so very good about being there for the fans, and because you're a fan of sci-fi yourself. So
Totally.
I appreciate you being here. What have you been working on lately? What's been going on?
Well, during this year of the pandemic, we've actually been shooting 3 TV series on 3 different continents.
Wow.
So we've been in the Philippines on a show called Almost Paradise. We're shooting The Outpost for the CW in Serbia. And we've just started our reboot of Leverage 2.0 that we are shooting in New Orleans right now. So it's been a wild year.
My goodness. How do you keep it all straight? Just patience and sleep?
Lot of caffeine.
A lot of caffeine. This set behind you here, this is an image from one of your shows, right?
Yes, this is one of the sets from Leverage.
Okay.
It's a virtual. I'm not actually on the set.
Right, exactly. I ran into you not last fall, I believe, but the fall before. You were doing the promotion for Bad Samaritan. And you were walking through the convention floor. And I was like, oh my God, it's Dean Devlin. And you're doing your live show.
That Denver or Long
That was in Anaheim.
In Anaheim, okay.
Yeah, and I stopped you in the middle of your show and asked for a photo. And you were gracious enough to provide a selfie. And then after the panel for Bad Samaritan, I told you about a show that I was working on, a Stargate interview series, and you said, let's do it. And that particular one, went the way of the Dodo. MGM put it. They closed that, but now I'm doing my own thing, and I really appreciate you holding up your end of the bargain and saying, you know what, we can still talk. So this means a great deal. I loved that movie. It was a great thriller, and what I really loved about it was the notion that people who are good can still be led astray and can still do some pretty evil things, and sometimes they have to be smacked in the side of the head and reminded that this is not the way to behave.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it was a interesting story in that you had someone who was not exactly law abiding, but at the same time was not violent, who got sucked into a violent situation. And obviously, it's a situation that wouldn't have happened had he not been of dubious morals. But in that moment, his true core of his morality comes to play. Will he stand up for someone he doesn't know who's in danger?
And in the process also say, yeah, by way of coming across this information and this individual, I was doing a bad thing. So in order to do the right thing, he must disclose what he's done and, pay the piper accordingly.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a great film. Anyone out there who has not seen it, I totally recommend it. There are two films from my childhood that stand out to me as a moviegoer. I was born in '83, and the first one is Jurassic Park, and it just set the bar for me in terms of how mind-boggling visual effects could be, and how amazing they could be to tell a compelling story, and sound, and well acted and everything else. And then the second one for me, as a child going into the film, was, I bet you can guess the second one.
Star Wars?
Independence Day.
Ah,
1996, 96, right?
that's right.
1997. I loved that movie. It was fun. The casting was perfect. The visual effects were amazing. You didn't go all digital. You used models, where it was appropriate. You used digital where it was appropriate, where I think, more films that came out later should probably have done the same, That film changed my life. It was such a fantastic experience. Do you have fond memories of that after all these years?
It's a movie that's hard to talk about because it's the only time in my life where every single thing went right from the very beginning to the very end.
Really?
And the whole time we were making the movie, we were waiting for the second shoe to drop. It's like, okay, it can't be this good. It can't be this. I mean, we wrote the script in 2 weeks. We sent it out to studios on a Wednesday. We were in pre-production on the following Monday. I mean, these things never happen, and to get our dream cast, I mean, it was just we had more fun than anyone should have with their clothes on. I mean, it was crazy.
Did you believe the success of the film? Because it exploded.
Well, we had a feeling that it would do better than our previous film, which was Stargate.
Yeah.
We thought this would do better than that, but we had no idea it was going to be, at that time, the #1 movie in the history of the world. That we didn't even dare to dream about.
Yeah, it was insane. And I bought all the memorabilia from that, all the discs, the floppy disks that came out with all the games on it. It really was the perfect film. I really think even today I'll go back and I'll watch it on my big screen, and it holds up better, I think, than it did. The visual effects certainly look more amazing than they did on the VCR cassette tapes and everything else. It's one of those.
The only thing that doesn't hold up for some reason is the helicopter blades. Somehow in the transfer from film to video, they get real wonky.
Really?
Yeah, one day I'd love to go fix that.
Okay, absolutely.
It's pretty much the way it looked at the time.
You were 15 when Star Wars came out in 1977.
13.
You were 13?
Wait, wasn't I 13? No.
77?
No, you're right. I was 15. That's right. I was 15.
Tell us.
I think I hadn't turned 15 yet because it was March, right?
Yeah, it was March. Weren't you going to turn 16 that year? Or okay. Anyway.
No.
Yeah. So
I would turn 15 that year in August.
Understood. Okay. You were at the first showing, the first night.
It was the afternoon. It was the first showing.
Okay, the afternoon.
And it was in the afternoon. I was number 9 in line. And I had no idea what it was I was going to see. I hadn't read any reviews or anything. I at the time I was living in the Valley in Studio City, and I took a bus by myself to Hollywood. Went to the Grauman's Chinese Theater, got in line, and it was so amazing because it was sold out. Again, none of us knew what we were going to see, and within the first 3 minutes of the movie, Darth Vader walks on screen and the entire audience starts booing and hissing. And I was like, how do we even know to do that? How did this audience participation happen?
He's in
And
black.
it changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, there is something about that franchise and how it just is bulletproof and withstanding the test of time. And I think there are elements inside of it from Joseph Campbell that
Oh,
I think Lucas really keyed in on, and a lot of samurai movies as well. It just has that perfect combination that just have generations coming back to it again and again.
yeah, it was a remarkable film, and I mean that whole first trilogy for me was just spectacular. But it's interesting because I know we're going to get into Stargate at some point
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But when you do have something like a Star Wars where the fans connect to it so deeply and passionately, you ultimately end up with a fan base that is almost impossible to please.
That's true.
Because their own imaginations and their own investments are so deep. I mean, I find it very interesting as each one of these new Star Wars movies comes out, and to see how they get savaged and loved at the same time. And I'm always surprised how rarely I'm in agreement with most people on it. And the fact that people can love one movie and hate the other and just still keep coming back for more is a real tribute to how deep that love is for that fan base.
It shows how you can't really get upset over something that you don't care about.
Yeah, that's true.
It shows that the fan base has taken it and made it, and from my experience, it's almost a religious event going and seeing one of those movies.
Yeah.
It's like going into church and just having this thing, a presence wash over you, and to be elevated and transformed through storytelling is a wonderful experience. So
It's really interesting. That my eldest daughter, when she was really young, I turned her on to Star Wars, and she fell in love with it. She wanted to have Star Wars stuff on her bed, and I'll never forget when she ended up going to school for being a girl who liked Star Wars. And she ended up feeling embarrassed about liking Star Wars because of this pressure. And she kind of like rebelled against it afterwards. And I thought that was such an interesting thing that, I guess at that age, the boys wanted it to be theirs. They
Right.
didn't want the girls to share in it. It was such an interesting thing.
no, I think Carrie was a fine example of no, it's for everyone.
For sure.
Dean, who are your personal heroes? People in your life, people literary, people of the film and television industry.
Well, there's heroes in different aspects. I mean, I think we're blessed to live in a time where there's a lot of heroes and a lot of villains, and a lot of people that you can relate to. I think if we're talking about filmmaking, without a doubt, Spielberg is at the top of that list for me. Roland Emmerich, who was my partner and my mentor, definitely one of my heroes. My father, who was a filmmaker, was definitely one of my heroes. And that's really kind of the path I went down. But then I also, I was really motivated by the films of Francois Truffaut, Scorsese, Woody Allen, James Cameron. So there's a lot of heroes in my life.
Who set you on the course to becoming the man you are? Who was the most influential?
Probably my father. We had such a contentious relationship in that my father was a movie producer and he hated the movie business.
Really?
He hated it. And he literally forbade me from being in it.
Oh, there you go.
And we went over a year without speaking because I was going to do it with or without his permission. And ultimately, he accepted the fact that there was no turning me away from it. But I think those early lessons from him on what made it so miserable for him, so that I could create a path for myself that would not be miserable, and his advice and his wisdom was really helpful for avoiding a lot of the traps that can happen in the entertainment business.
Wow. Tell us about creating Stargate. You co-wrote it with Emmerich.
Mm-hmm.
Which of you came up with the idea of the gate itself originally?
Neither of us. So what happened was this. Uh, I was an actor in a movie that Roland had done. And I had ended up, it's a long story, but I ended up doing some rewriting on that. And he ended up liking my writing. And we started to work together doing scripts. And as we were looking at projects to do, he kept telling me about a project that he'd been working on since he was in film school called Necropole. And what it was about was it was about a spaceship that was buried underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. And he had these great scenes where these children are lured there at night and they vanish and everything. But he'd never really flushed it out. But he really loved this idea of a spaceship buried under the Great Pyramid of Giza. And I had been working on something that was very rough in my head that I jokingly would call Lawrence of Arabia in outer space. And in mine, it was a good guy, bad guy who are chasing each other in space, and they go through a wormhole. But the good guy, he hesitates for 5 seconds before he follows him in. But those 5 seconds end up being 30 years on the other side when he lands. And by then, the villain has taken over this other world.
There's a time change. Okay.
So that was my project. Necropole was his project. And we said, maybe there's some way to kind of connect these together and turn it into one project. And a wonderful production designer named Oliver Scholl, he was hearing our idea and he said, you know, there's a device that's used very often in science fiction literature, but not that often in science fiction films. And he said, it's the teleportation device. You know, we saw it in The Fly, and of course it was in Star Trek, but you don't really see it as often as we see it in literature. And that's when it just snapped. And said, that's how we connect these two movies. It's the Stargate. It's the teleportation device.
And it was originally triangular, wasn't it? There were several versions of that.
That's right.
Was that a pyramid echo?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But then when Roland came up with the idea of how the chevrons would align and move in, then we knew the triangle wasn't going to work.
Yeah, and also the circle, one of the most universal symbols in the world. So there's something to be said to that too. Did the whole gate spin on set, or was it just sections of it?
The inner ring.
I'm losing you a little bit there. Can you please repeat?
Kit West was our. The entire inner circle spun. Okay. It was built by our 4FX guy named Kit West, who had done the Raiders of the Lost Ark movies, and so it was a really functioning device on set, and the chevrons that clicked in and the inner circle spinning. That was all practical. My
oh my. And so if I can go down the rabbit hole in terms of minutia, you're gonna be like, I don't know, man. This was 30 years. Well, there are 7 chevrons in the sequence, but there are 9 on the gate. Were there plans for the other 2 chevrons? Was it just a design aesthetic? The 9 looked better?
No. The original plan of the movie was to do 3 movies. And so there was going to be 3 major addresses. And that's why we needed the 9. But we never got to do parts 2 and 3.
Got it. So the second film would have included an 8 chevron address?
Well, it would have included one of the other chevrons that was not in the original.
Ah, I see. So one of the chevrons is for one. Okay, interesting. So each chevron had, of the 3 that were remaining on the end, had to do with a different location.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So the Stargate was going to go in other places.
Yeah. We had big plans for it, but we never got to explore it.
What were there any other contenders for the roles of Jack and Daniel, or were Russell and Spader the ones from the beginning?
You know, I think they were our first choices. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I again, remember, this was an independent movie. Right. MGM was not involved in the making of this film.
Right.
And so a lot of this had to do with how do we get the money to make this film? And I'll never forget when we were talking about trying to figure out big stars, there was kind of like, well, who's your wish list? And, as a guy who, grew up on Kurt Russell movies, man, I can't imagine anyone better than Kurt Russell. And he actually turned the film down several times before he finally said yes.
What made him
And
say yes? Did you adjust something, or
money.
was it a
No,
schedule thing?
it was money. It was
Okay.
we just kept offering him more money until he finally said yes. And I'll never forget, he came into the office after he'd said yes, and he said, look, guys, I just want you to know that the kind of money you're offering me is incredible, and I'm really grateful. And even though I think that this is a really stupid movie, I'm gonna work my butt off on it because you're paying me so much. So he left the office, and we kind of were like, wait, do we really want him in the movie? You
This
think
guy
this is
did Big Trouble in Little China, you know?
well? But what we found out later was he'd been given the wrong script. That the reason he turned it down is somehow somebody had sent him the very first draft, which was awful.
God.
Roland and I had worked on this thing for years, and I don't know how the first draft got to him, but the first draft was almost
Man.
like a high school kid wrote the first draft.
Right.
So when we finally gave him the shooting draft, he was like, oh, this is really much better.
And how much money could you have saved at the right script?
Unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
But he was a joy. He was an absolute joy to work with. I mean, he told us the truth. That guy worked his butt off on it. He was 1,000% committed. I mean, you could see his performance in the movie. He was totally committed. Even when we were doing really goofy stuff, he was on board, man, and it was great.
Him and Spader. My favorite scene from that movie is him, is Spader going to him and saying, I don't want to die. These men don't want to die, and these people don't want to die. It's a shame that you're in such a hurry to. And they have that heart-to-heart connection where Jack admits to Daniel, this is the reason I'm here. My kid's gone. Did the story of a father who lost his son come from any place specific?
I don't remember how we came to it, but what's interesting that you're bringing this up is that had been cut from the film, along with some other things, because our executive producer believed that the film was too slow. And so we'd cut out all the character stuff, and it was just kind of pure action. And the movie tested in the toilet. It was going to be a giant disaster. And everybody walked away from the movie. I mean, literally, they walked away. Roland and I walked in the editing room, and it was empty. I mean, they'd sent everyone home. And then Roland and I just said, well, listen, if everyone thinks this is going to be a disaster anyway, let's put back all the stuff. So we put back that storyline and all the other character storylines and all the stuff that they said made the movie slow. And then we got to test it one more time before we released it, and the slow rating vanished. So what we learned very early on is it's not how many things blow up or how many action sequences there are. It's how engaged are we with the characters. And as you just brought that up, that storyline with him is what made his character compelling. Absolutely. And when that was missing, he was just a tough guy being mean for no reason.
How was James Spader in his execution of Daniel versus Daniel on the page? It's a fantastic performance.
Well, he's a guy who brings so much. I mean, he's a very serious actor. Just to give an example, there was this. There's this old joke that they always have in screenwriting, where the writer will write, "The army marches over the hill," and then it's a 15-minute sequence of armies, right?
Yeah, well, go do that. Yeah.
I had kind of done that in that I wrote in the script, they walk through the Stargate. That's all it said in the script. Literally one line, they walk through the Stargate. But of course, when you see the film, the first group goes through, and then Kurt Russell lifts his gun, and then he goes through, but the last person is Spader.
The inquisitive one.
Yeah, and when we went to shoot it, he stopped at the water, and he put his hands in, and then he pulled his hands out, and he looked at his hands. And meanwhile, Jeff Oken, who was our effects supervisor, is yelling in my ear, "We can't hold the effect that long. Tell him he can't do that.
No, this is going to be, yeah.
Like, shut up. We'll figure it out."
Live while it's happening?
Literally while we were shooting it, he's like,
God.
"We can't do this. And of course, it's my favorite moment in the entire movie. And that was not in the script. And there's dozens of things like that Spader brought, where he would just be the character. And suddenly this magic would happen that we'd never intended.
Was it his intent to rip the one page of the newspaper away from the guard? It's like little things like that.
Yeah, exactly. That was absolutely all him.
I have had the privilege of getting to know Alexis Cruz. over the last several years. I love that guy. He just had a baby, and
Really?
he's awesome. And he talks about being 16 years old and being cast in the role, and then having it be revealed to him the scope of what this actual movie is, and being shown his action figure, and you just taking him through all this stuff. Because I mean, that wasn't presented to him when he was cast, according to his memory. It was after the fact that he's seeing, oh my gosh, this is a whole thing, you know?
Well, again, you have to remember, this is 94.
Yeah.
And CG was not very good in 94. So when we wrote that there was a 15-story set, we had to build a 15-story set. So, that whole entrance of the pyramid was built for real. That chamber inside was built for real. So
Ra's ship, his main thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't that one of the biggest sound stages in the world?
It was actually it's where they used to keep the Spruce Goose, the dome in Long Beach.
Wow.
So it was gigantic. And, I think that, when people read it in the script, they didn't realize the scope. They didn't realize the scale. And again, I give that 100% to Roland, because Roland is so visual, and he imagines these things that I wouldn't dare as a writer, because I'd say, we can never afford to do that. We can't. He doesn't care.
We're gonna make it happen. We'll find a way.
We'll figure it out.
It's like the gliders, the first version of the gliders with like this brick shaped object with weapons turrets, and there's.
Well, they were meant to look like, the original ones were meant to look like chariots.
Yeah.
So that's why they had that shape. But then Roland was like, that's gonna look terrible.
Yeah, it was just a design aesthetic. It was like you were filming it, because there's footage in the special features of them being shot across the set on wires.
Yeah.
And so
Cool.
Totopoulos did a last minute design change and created the gliders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, what a genius! Jeez, that guy is just brilliant. I think his work in Stargate is good. His work in Independence Day is just ridiculous. So
He was a gift, and he has an acting part in The Patriot.
I did not know that, and I just saw The Patriot again recently.
The Patriot again, when they're being rescued by the French ships, he's the captain of the French ship, commanding them to fire.
Hey, absolutely. We'll go back and see that. I mentioned before we started how Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is crystal clear in this movie, as far as I'm concerned, in three ways. You've got Jack definitely as the reluctant hero going on a journey, Daniel as well, and Skara. You've got three men who have to take on various tasks to either keep from killing themselves, to survive with a paycheck, and to rescue their people from a malevolent evil force. Was that deliberate, or did that just organically appear? And do you agree with that assessment of those three? Are there more in your opinion?
There's more. I mean, if you look at, and I'm forgetting her name right now.
Shouty?
No, the woman who found the
Catherine Langford.
Catherine Langford is our older advisor character.
Yeah.
So there's look, it's not a coincidence. We literally, and I feel so bad that I don't remember her name at this. It was
Vivica Lindfors.
No. We hired a woman who was an expert in Joseph Campbell, and she's the one who worked with us on the script. And I forgive me if you're watching this. I think her first name was Linda, and I'm forgetting her last name. But she came in and looked at the script, and then started talking about Joseph Campbell, and then we started making adjustments, and that's when the script really started to sing, when we were able to kind of see what we were trying to do, but then put it into a more traditional framework.
Yeah, the characters all have that arc. And it's again an example of characters that there are certain rules that you just use because they withstand the test of time. There are a lot of story mechanics and world building and rule building in this film. The wormhole only goes one way. That's that the reason for that is so that it prevents them from getting home. There's similar content with like the rings and everything else. Did those kind of things come easy when you were developing the script? Were they something like, oh, geez, we have to do this, in order to make this story work this way, or was it the whole process? Oh, this is amazing. Let's do this because it'll lead to this.
Well, that particular thing was essential because what we were trying to tell was a stranded story. So in a traditional stranded story, you're on a ship, you're going somewhere, but then the ship gets wrecked, and now you're stuck on an island. How do you get off the island, right? And so that was the idea. And then to give it more character is that the being stranded wasn't an accident. Daniel didn't tell them that they would be stranded.
He knows good and well what he's doing.
Yeah, because he wants to go on the adventure so much.
Right.
So
you're a lying son of a bitch.
So that was inherent. The part that was surprising is we made up a whole lot of ancient Egyptian mythology. We just made it up. And then we hired an expert from UCLA to come in, Stuart, forget me. And he came in and basically said, oh, almost all of this is correct. And I was like, it can't be correct. We just made it up. And then he kind of smiled and said, well, that's the amazing thing about ancient Egypt. If you go in with almost any theory, you will go there and you'll find evidence to support your theory. And then he actually created, or the recreation of the ancient Egyptian, which doesn't exist. And I'll never forget our executive producer was so angry when he found out how much money I'd spent to recreate a language that no one on earth would know if it was real or not real. And I kept telling him, no, it's important. It's important. He goes,
it needs to be correct.
Block, no one will know. And I said, trust me, it's important. And I'll never forget, before the movie came out, I was doing the tour of all the science fiction conventions. And there was enormous hesitancy to support Stargate before it came out, mostly because we had the word star in the title. And so they thought, oh, they're trying to rip off Star Trek or Star Trek.
Battlestar Galactica, yeah.
And it wasn't until they found out that the language had actually been really recreated that they started to take us seriously. And it was a very interesting thing. I remember actually being at the Denver convention, and as that information came out, more and more people came over and started asking about the language, and suddenly we were okay because we had taken that step. So I felt vindicated.
Well, you proved that science fiction can be serious within its context. I mean, if you're going to go to the trouble to create something, and you give a crap about it, you're going to make it as faithful as you can to what we can create or recreate. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a fantasy movie, but every place we could put a little bit of an anchor in, it hooked into something, whether it was conscious or subconscious.
And I'm sure you've been told repeatedly throughout the years, people who have, I've lost count the number of people that I've encountered who have become historians or instructors or Egyptologists based on their initial encounter with this movie.
No, I would say over the years, it's been a few dozen times people have said something to that effect to me.
Yeah, that's got to be rewarding. I mean, you're creating a piece of entertainment, and in many cases, you change lives. So
it's remarkable. But I mean, that's what this whole fandom is, though. I mean, whether it's this movie or any of the others that are supported by this group, is that they tend to take people who are very smart but felt that they were outcasts or felt like they were weird.
Yeah. Like Daniel.
And then through these fandoms, they realize, oh, I'm not so weird. There's a lot of people just like me.
Yeah, and I have something to contribute. Mm-hmm. So I just have to figure out what it is. Tell us about shooting in Yuma. What month? What time of the year was that?
I don't remember what month it was, but it was hot. It was over 120 degrees. And we had PAs with big water barrels strapped to their back, and they had sprayers like the kind you would normally do to put like insecticide on plants, and they would just walk down and spray down the extras because it was so hot. And we had several collapse in the heat that we had to take to hospital, and it was insane.
And you had
Horus that had to wear the costume You know, that was one of those Clydesdale horses, like you see the Michelob.
For the Mastich, yeah.
You know, and that Clydesdale horse had this huge costume on in that heat. You know, so we were constantly keeping keeping that horse watered down and cooled down, and it was nuts.
And the logistical issues of, you know, something so ridiculous and you know, important, and when you think about it, because the camera's going there, of wiping away footprints in the sand, you know,
well,
carrying
you know, I mean, today you would just erase it digitally. It wouldn't be a problem. We couldn't do that then. And I remember at one point, Roland had this brilliant idea. He said, we'll get a helicopter and it'll just blow the sand. So we brought in this helicopter and it was a disaster. Oh my God. And then I remember one day, you know, there's that great moment where Kasuf screams at the top of the hill and he runs
the battle cry.
And follow him. Well, take one of that. We had 9 cameras going. And what we should have said to the extras is just follow Kasuf. What we ended up saying to the extras was run straight towards the camera. But there were 9 cameras. So he goes, and he goes running down the hill and everybody disperses. And by the time Kasuf got to the bottom of the hill, he was alone. The entire sand dune was completely ruined because there were footprints everywhere. And, you know, we had to move to another sand dune and do it all over again.
So didn't bother resetting. That's the next one. Let's go over there. They're all the same.
We had no choice.
Oh, my God. That's fantastic. Eric was exceptional in that role, you know, and he's done his CV is a mile long at 10-point font. You know, what a talented actor. I would imagine, and maybe you did write it in, the amount of humor that he brought in, so much of that had to have been him.
Well, you know, I mean, we always try to put humor in wherever possible.
Right.
Once we realized we had someone with his gift, it was just, oh, let's crank it up. Let's just crank it up.
Absolutely. I was so surprised years later in finding out that there was going to be that there were 2 more films in the original trilogy planned, because there's so few movies these days that end with the end, and Stargate does. I was like, that was good, you know. And then I found out that you wanted to do 2 more for the original trilogy. Is there anything that you can say about what you wanted to do with it? I'd love to hear whatever you're willing to say. You just told earlier that there were 2 other locations that were planned. So a location for each additional movie.
I'll say this just because I don't think we're ever going to get to do it.
Right.
So, you know, there are 2 different places on Earth that are famous for pyramids. You know, and one was an Egyptian, and our second was going to be a Mayan culture.
Okay. So not necessarily Ra's race again. He was the last of his race for good.
Yeah. And then the third was going to tie in almost every mystery that we've ever had on Earth, whether it was Bigfoot or the Yeti, or we were going to tie everything into a larger mythology.
Tapestry.
Yeah. And it was going to be so much fun. It was going to be so wild, but we never got to go there. We never got to explore it.
Was it the TV franchise, the success of the TV franchise, that where MGM was like, no, we're just not interested in doing it this direction? What was it, money? What was the biggest factor in not pursuing that?
It was the television show. Okay. I mean, what had happened was, again, the film was made entirely independently. There was no studio involved. So MGM agreed to release the film when no one else would release it because no one believed in the movie. And the week before the movie opened, the people who had financed the movie, which was a group out of France, they were so sure that they had a bomb, they sold the movie to MGM for $5 million. So then MGM owned the movie.
And I'm guessing even in that money, that was a steal at that time, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a movie that cost $50 million.
$50 million.
And it made over $200 million at that time. It was the largest October opening in history at that time. And so MGM now owned it. And they decided they wanted to do a TV series. Roland and I went in to meet with them to talk about the series. And they said, oh, we don't really want you guys involved. And we were like, really? Okay. And they went on their own.
Okay.
And so it was a very painful thing for a long time because you're watching
Yeah, something that you gave
somebody
birth
else
to.
raise your children. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was very hard, and that's why it was so interesting because uh, I was very hostile to the series, especially because
I
I don't
don't
know if you
blame
heard,
you.
but the first couple episodes of the series had full frontal nudity.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not Stargate.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any idea what show we're doing?
Yeah. Even
So
Brad Wright had a problem with that. That was Showtime. Showtime
yeah,
said if you want this, it has to have that. And then they never did it again. And the final cut of Children of the Gods, they took it out. So
yeah. So I had kind of rebelled again. I was angry that the studio had cut us out of it, that they didn't want to do the movies. Uh, but what was interesting is that many years later, it was obvious to me that even though I had not been watching the show, that they must have been doing something right because you don't get to live that long. You don't get to have that many fans. You don't get that kind of passion unless you've done a really good show.
17 seasons,
Yeah.
350 episodes. Something's working. And the passion of the fan base has only grown.
So I reached out to Jonathan Glassner and I said, let's go have lunch. And it was and
Can you repeat that, Dean? I just lost
Glassner,
you. You reached out to Jonathan Glassner?
I reached out to Jonathan Glassner, who I had never met. And as you said, 17 seasons of Stargate. And we go out and we have lunch and we hit it off. And next thing I know, he and I are doing The Outpost together.
Absolutely.
And he and I've actually talked about a very different Stargate idea, and I hope one day I can talk to MGM about it as a series.
So as a series, not the reboot trilogy that you were working.
No, I think that ship has sailed.
Okay.
I think it's sailed.
I want to speak a little bit on that. You hired Nicholas Wright and James Woods. My understanding and this may be rumor, but I was in LA at a props warehouse at the time, selling off a lot of the original Stargate props, and I knew people who said that they had friends in the industry where they were building new helmets. I mean, it got that far. They were according to them, they were building new prototype helmets for a new Stargate. How far did that go?
Well, that may have happened. What basically happened is the script for the movies came out right after the sequel of Independence Day, and the making of the Independence Day sequel was for me a terrible experience.
Really? Okay.
And then when I read the script of where we were going with Stargate, I basically just lost interest. I thought, I don't like working at studios. I don't have a good time doing that. I like being independent. I don't like the direction where the script's going. And I basically bowed out.
Okay.
And then I know they went on for a little while after that. So they may have gotten that far, but I wasn't involved anymore at that point.
But a script for the first reboot film exists.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Did it include any of the characters from the original, or was it okay.
Yeah. No, it was the original characters, but then kind of with this other global warming idea that felt heavy-handed to me.
Okay. And would it have been a straight reboot, or would it have honored the content that had come before from the original film?
From the original film, there was a lot being pulled from that, but then it, like I said, it went in a whole other direction and didn't at all connect with the series.
Got it.
I think that was another thing that could have been very, very tough for the fans.
It's so frustrating, that development hell, so much stuff lives there in the industry. Some things get out and get made radically different to what they were meant to be. And some things, like Independence Day, it just all came together. What a legacy, though, with this franchise. I would have so been interested to see what your take would have been with the property going in the direction that you had wanted to, despite the fact that I love the TV property as well. And I think that there's room in the multiverse for all of it.
Well, that's the beauty of Stargate, is that between all the series and the movie and the different worlds, is that there's a lot of stories that can be told. I mean, honestly, I think if there ever was a property that lent itself to a cinematic universe, it's Stargate, and it hasn't really been exploited. And that's why I said, when Glasser and I started talking about how to do a Stargate that was not stepping on the toes of anything else,
right,
we came up with something and got very excited about it. But then COVID hit, and we never had a chance to tell anyone. So who knows? Maybe next year we'll sit down with MGM and pitch them.
Oh, so that was my next question then. So I mean, COVID notwithstanding and everything else that's going on, Stargate is not off the table forever for you.
I think the features are.
Okay.
But I think under the right situation, I would consider doing a series again. Okay. If it was the right show and it, and done in the right way. I'm in a kind of crazy, fortunate place in my life where I've been able to work somewhat independently, and not everybody likes the stuff I do, but I like it, and that's
you have to make it for you first.
Yeah, that's kind of heaven when you get to do the stuff that you like doing, and then it gets embraced. So yeah, if we could set up something like that, I would go back to it. And also, I just love working with Jonathan. He's been great. I mean,
he's cool.
We're gonna have 46 episodes of Outposts soon that we've done together now, and I just love his work.
Absolutely, I do too. I have some fan questions here that have been submitted, if you don't mind. Spartan 343. Oh no, we've already addressed that with the plans for the sequels. Excuse me, I'm just pulling this open for the first time here. Can you talk about the casting process for the original movie? Any of the characters that we haven't discussed that surprised you when they were brought to life?
We were having a lot of trouble finding our female lead, Shaori.
Yes.
And we'd already started shooting the movie, and we hadn't cast it yet. And everyone was freaking out and just saying, what are we going to do? But Roland was absolutely adamant. He says, I'm not casting someone who's a compromise. She's got to walk in the door, and we got to know it's her. And when this young actress from Israel showed up,
Millie Avatal,
it just blew our minds. Millie not only nailed it, but also gave her a strength and an independence that was beyond what we were writing, and made it much more interesting. And I learned a real valuable lesson from Roland that day, that you don't compromise. You got to get the right casting, or it just doesn't work.
Yeah, the consequences can be. Yeah, the
consequence that we had on that was Jay Davidson, because Jay Davidson had just been nominated for an Oscar for what was the name of that movie?
It's The Crying something.
The Crying Game.
Yeah,
The Crying Game. And so our executive producer said, "Oh, this guy's gonna be worth a fortune for us in foreign sales." But we thought, is this guy really someone who can go toe to toe with Kurt Russell, or is that going to be believable?
And Spader.
Yeah, and we shot the movie, and it didn't work. And he didn't work. It was bad casting. It wasn't right. And I'll never forget, Roland and I were in a car together, just lamenting that our whole movie was falling apart because our villain was not working. And then I remember I turned to Roland and said, "Wait a minute, Roland. Ra doesn't work for the aliens. He is an alien." And Roland goes, "We've already shot the picture. How do we do that change?" And I go, "We'll do a day of reshoots." And so that whole turning Ra into an alien was all done on a Sunday.
Beforehand, he worked for them?
The original, if you look at the extended version, there's this scene where
they come and grab him.
They come and grab him. And in the original, they grabbed him to come work for them. And so he was their slave master, in essence. But that didn't work at all.
You cheeky buggers, you hit it well.
So
Never considered that.
So when we changed it, we made his voice weird. We made his eyes go out. And we put an alien inside of his skull. It was great. Then all that weird behavior he was doing suddenly had a meaning.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I'm blown away. Wow. Okay. Well, you have to work with what you've got, and if it's already in the can, what do you do?
Figure it out.
Absolutely. You're going to find a way.
The interesting thing was I was so worried that he was going to be upset because that's not what we had intended. And I'll never forget, he saw the picture and he came to me with tears in his eyes and he said, "You saved me." He goes, "I thought I had ruined the picture." He goes, you saved me. So he loved the change that we had done.
Wow.
That was a surprise, and I was grateful.
How nice. Absolutely. Yeah. John 42, if the Ancient Aliens TV show, oh boy, was around when you were writing the movie, would you have considered making the pyramids power stations instead of landing platforms?
Well, no, we not for our story.
Yeah.
A lot of where our thing came from was the Von Daniken novels, the Chariots of the Gods.
Yes.
And the mystery of why were the pyramids built. And so the idea of it, that they were actually landing platforms, one, gave us an answer to a mystery, but it also cracked us up. I mean, we literally fell over laughing after we came up with that.
Who's going to sit on that?
Yeah, we just have, what a bizarre thing. What if that whole thing there was just to prop up a spaceship? And so it gave us a thrill.
Absolutely. Ian says, I'm an editor. I'm working on a short film currently. What skills do you like to see in editors that you work with? And what are your favorite kind of cuts? Smash cuts, J cuts, L cuts? I'm assuming you would know what that means.
So it's an excellent question. I love the editing room. That's my favorite part of the entire filmmaking process. I think if my career ever took a nosedive, I would try and get a job in an editing room. I absolutely love editing.
It's fun. Yeah.
Well, it's the last chance you have to fix things.
Yes.
You can't take a terrible movie and make it a great movie, but if you have a movie that's almost there, you can get it the rest of the way, and you can get rid of all those things that bump you right out of the picture too. And sometimes you can really change performances and change intentions, and we sure did a lot of that on Stargate. I wouldn't say that I have any favorite kind of editing, because I think it really depends on what you're doing. If someone were to look at say the pilot episode I did of Leverage versus a Bad Samaritan, they'd see completely different styles of editing, even on the same director, because you're trying to accomplish things differently.
What does the story need?
Yeah. And what is the tone? Because I would stay on shots for a crazy long amount of time on Bad Samaritan to try and make your skin crawl.
Intensity.
I would never do that on one of these other shows where I want it fast and poppy and fun. So, I like all the tools, and the fun part is figuring out what's the right tool. And what I look for in editors is editors who have their own ideas. Beth Reescraft was one of the actors in Leverage. She just directed for the first time an episode for us. And I was telling her that so many times when I'm directing, I'll see the first cut and I'll say to the editor, no, it's not supposed to go like that. You start with this shot, then go to this shot, then go to this shot, and go to this shot. Then they'll do it the way I said. And then I'll look at it and go, show me the way you had it again. Because very often, it's that fresh eye. So, what I would say I don't like in an editor is someone who's simply doing what I tell them to do.
Follows the rules. Follows the rules. Yeah.
Yeah. I like an editor who has opinions, even if I don't agree with them, who has a vision, who says, well, what if we try this and what if we try that? And then usually between what I want and what they want or what they come up with, then real magic can happen. I
can completely see where you're coming from with that. I had the privilege of working with a team when I was in college and creating a Choose Your Own Adventure DVD movie as my final in college back in 2005. So it's before Netflix and all these other things, and it had 15 endings.
Oh
and
my God.
I was privileged to collaborate with a group of young people that had great ideas, and it was my project, and I had it's going to be this way, you know, but please give me your ideas, but I'm going to shoot this first. 8, 9 times out of 10, their ideas would improve upon it. I mean, maybe I just have crappy ideas, but no, I mean, they're also seeing it as well.
I think really good filmmaking is being open to ideas from everyone. You know, the PAs sometimes have the best idea. You never know, but if you're not open to hearing it, you know, Tony Bill once said to me that he looked at the director as a funnel, not as an engine. That he gets the greatest ideas from everyone around him and then his taste or her taste funnels it down to the right choices.
Isn't that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Free Spirit 999. How did the design of the Horus and Anubis guards come to be? What gave the production team the idea to go with the mechanical helmets? And were they based on the depictions of hieroglyphs? Some impressive effects. They could not have been easy.
Well, that was actually the first CG that Roland and I had ever done, because we couldn't figure out a way to make the helmets actually do any of that.
Right.
And it was an effects house called Kleiser Walzak, and they designed how the mechanics worked, and the visual was designed by Tatopoulos.
Yeah.
But it was a scary thing because we didn't know if that was going to work.
Your camera's moving, the actors are moving. You know, it's an intensive. I can't imagine how much that cost.
In those days, it was really cutting edge. It was one of the few things we did that was cutting edge, because most of the stuff we did was kind of old-fashioned techniques because of the budget we had. That was the one thing where we couldn't figure out any other way to do it. And the director Randall Kleiser, it was actually his that did those back.
Can you back up, Dean? Director Randall Kleiser, what now?
It was his brother whose company did those digital effects. So wow. Yeah, I was real proud of that part. But it was a tricky design because obviously we had to do something that represented, you know, the original designs of Horus and Anubis that you'd seen on hieroglyphics forever. But we needed to have that hidden, that they're not really gods. It's a facade to hide the person underneath.
Just press this little button right here. Gibb says,
and of course that's Jaimin Hunso. So
yes, exactly, before he was big.
So years later, when Spielberg said he discovered him, not so fast.
No, not at all.
We found him in a cattle call, and we had him.
Right. Absolutely, and what a career he's had. I love watching his stuff.
He's a force.
Gibb says, given the advancements in tech, how or what would you have done differently in production if you made the film today?
I think we would have made, as big as it was, I think we would have made it bigger. I think we would have made the cities bigger. We'd have done more set extension. I think things like that, just to give it more lush. When you saw all the extras lined up, most of those were sticks with costumes on them.
And you're just panning, you're moving fast enough that you don't tell.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. My God.
Today, you would actually just digitally
insert them.
Add thousands of people and make it amazing. Then we had about 300 extras at the front, and then everything behind them was sticks with wardrobe stuck on top of it.
It works.
It works.
I bought it. That shot, that master shot of the city, and 16:9, screen. Actually, it's 21:9, the aspect ratio for the film, and it just keeps on going and going and going. It's one of the most magnificent images. I mean, that's got to be a model.
No, that whole center was built for real. The things on East and West, it's an extension with the model, but that whole thing that they walked through was actually built. So when you see that big crane shot, that's craning through an actual set. Those were the biggest sets I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, they're before or since.
Wow. And Alexis talked about burning them like in effigy at the end of production.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. So the city was never a model for the wide shot at all?
Yes, because when we had that dust storm come,
yes,
we built a model for that.
Okay.
And that first big wide shot was a combination of the real set with the model.
Got it. Okay. Absolutely. Give me just a moment here to I have to set everything back up just a little bit. I apologize. I'm juggling a couple of different things at once here. Okay. Perfect. Let me see here. Was Egyptian mythology always meant to be at the center of the movie's story, or were other ideas explored for the initial film? You said Mayan would have eventually come later.
Yeah, no, the first one was always intended to be Egyptian, but we did then want to go into other mythologies afterwards, and then we wanted to try to make connections between them.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of the things that that Stargate itself, SG-1 and Atlantis, went on to do. So they Atlantis mythology. One of the guys in Daniel's audience brings up Men from Atlantis, and SG-1 eventually went on to do that. So it's interesting that, and it makes sense that a lot of those elements would have been in your story anyway. So had you had the chance to explore that. All right. Do you believe that, Teresa McAllister, do you believe it's possible that that technology exists on Earth hidden somewhere?
Possible? Yes. Probable? No.
Okay. Pete Mine, where's the third Independence Day movie, Dean? The way you set it up in the end, it's a fair question.
Well, I'll tell you this. The original version that I wrote with Roland Emmerich was actually 2 scripts.
The 96 movie, or the one with Independence Day 2?
Independence Day 2, when we actually submitted it, we actually submitted part 2 and 3.
Got it.
2 full scripts written. But in those scripts, we had Will Smith.
Ah, okay.
And when Will Smith changed his mind and decided he didn't want to do the film, then the first script got rewritten dramatically. So I don't really know where part 3 would have gone.
I see.
I really wish we could have shot the version that we wrote, because it was interesting, because when we first handed it into the studio, they said it was the best first draft of anything they'd ever seen. And then by the time we made the movie, it was a radically different film.
Is it just because along the way you had to compromise, or along the way things just changed but by the nature of the nature of the beast is what it is?
Well, I think the first thing was not having Will Smith.
Yeah.
And that really changed it a lot, and changed where the focus was. And then once Will Smith was not there, then there were a whole lot of voices involved in development that, because remember, when we did the first movie, Roland and I wrote it ourselves. 9 studios wanted it. And when we sold it, we had total creative control. To do the sequel, suddenly we didn't own our own movie anymore. And we had to please a lot of different voices that, frankly, I don't think ever really understood Independence Day. We had notes from the studio saying, well, you can't do comedy today because it's not modern. I was like, but Independence Day is borderline comedy.
Requires comedy. That's what makes the glue.
Yeah, I mean, that's what made it fun, is like we acknowledged what was silly and said, just go with it. Yeah. And everyone did and had fun. But so that did not go well.
Marsha Middleton. Hi, Marsha. Friend of mine. Dean, you've always been close to your fans, and we adore you for that. Have you ever put in just a little something, a scene or a phrase in one of your shows just for the fans? Like a nod?
Oh, all the time. I mean, most of the Easter eggs I know that the audience aren't going to get, who are new to it. That really it's only the hardcore fans. And usually, especially in our TV series, as we get farther along in them, I stop writing for new fans at a certain point. Because I figure if you've come up, if you're in season 3 and you're still with me, I'm writing to you at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big believer in doing that. And then sometimes I'll tell you this, because I do love to read what the fans write about the show. That's the beauty of social media.
Exactly. For better or for worse, there it is.
But I'll tell you, I have, especially in the Librarians, I altered the course of where I was going based on
feedback.
Hearing things the fans were, just hearing what the fans were wanting, or where they were misled, or things that they had questions about, made me go, that's actually not a bad idea. Maybe we go that way, or maybe I can answer that question in a different way, or so I really enjoy it.
That's great. It's like, no, it's going to be exactly the way I wanted it, and you're going to eat it, and you're going to like it. This is what my mother used to say to me. But that makes. But as long as it's still, from a place of where your vision is, why not?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when people plan out 5 seasons of a show, they're missing out on the best part of the creative process, because often the actors are going to do things that you didn't expect, and it's going to create in the original Leverage, we never really planned for Hardison and Parker to have a love affair, but when we saw them on screen together, there was magic, and we said, oh,
it made
wait a
sense.
minute, this is going somewhere, let's explore it.
Absolutely.
And I remember also on Leverage, there was a moment where Tim Hutton, when they mentioned his father, he turned and his eyes got all, I was like, ooh, what's the story between him and his father? Let's go figure that out.
And that was
now.
Hutton's just gesture, a little piece. Wow.
So I think you have to be open to so many things, because that's where it gets interesting. That's where it gets creative.
Summer wants to know, any information yet on a new season of Almost Paradise? Where can I show my support for the show most? Electric Now, Amazon Prime?
So we will be making an announcement of in the first quarter of next year of where the show will be available. And when we make that announcement, please, everybody rush there and support the show. And they've told us that if the show does well, they'll pick up season 2. And
there you go.
And we're already working on storylines for season 2. And, Christian Kane's desperate to get back to the Philippines. So, first quarter next year, stay tuned to our Twitter feeds, and we'll be making an announcement.
Great. SG1 props. Along with the movie, there were the series of Stargate novels published, the Bill McKay books.
Yeah, those are great.
Were any of your notes in that, or did he just take those in a completely different direction? You guys say, okay, go have fun.
No, we worked with him on those original ones, and
okay.
And I'm real proud of those, and I support those entirely.
Do you consider them to be in your canon?
Yeah.
Okay, so they are natural extensions of. So your movies could have folded those in.
100%.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow. There's a lot of fans who have read them and loved them. I have not actually read them, so I'm gonna have to go read them now.
They're quite good. He's a really good writer. He's really engaging.
All right, absolutely. And someone brought up Electric Now, and I had not been aware of Electric Now before you had mentioned it in our email exchange leading up to this interview. What can you tell us about it?
So, what we came to realize is that we had these wonderful fan bases. We had this great fan base for Leverage. We had a great fan base for the Librarians. We had a cool fan base for the Triangle. And I thought, we need to have some one-stop shop where everyone can go and congregate. And so we created a free streaming app, but because it's free, it has commercials.
Right.
But it's absolutely free to download, free to watch. And it has all the shows that Electric has made and all the shows that we have distribution rights to. And we're adding new content all the time. We're still working out some of the bugs on the app. So,
right, you have to start somewhere.
But we've got some big changes happening very soon. We're about to add about 200 hours more of content.
Wow.
And I think in a time where everybody's paying a lot of money for their streaming services, it's nice to be able to get additional content that you don't have to pay for. And the fun thing with Electric Now is it has, for those of us who like the old school, just turn on your television and have stuff on, it has a live channel that plays 24/7. And it has a program guide in the app to tell you what's on. And it has our movies, it has our TV shows, and it has our podcast network. And that kind of exploded. We really surprised, but we launched the Inglorious Treksperts, which is our podcast to Star Trek.
Yes.
And
I recognize some of the people on that. I watched, I was like, I know that guy. Oh, this is good. Yeah.
And we've had amazing guests on it, and they've got something like 25,000 subscribers now. So it's just nuts.
Wow. Do you think that Dial the Gate could find a place there?
I think Dial the Gate needs to be on Electric Now. I think you need to put it on our channel. Not exclusively. You can still put it other places, but
yeah,
I think
syndicate.
you should be on our place.
Okay.
100%.
Absolutely. I'm definitely very open to pursuing that. And
excellent. We would love to have you.
I would love to. Dean, this has been a treat. I have been looking forward to this for weeks now, and I hope that fans have enjoyed this as much as I have. We're already at nearly 1,000 playbacks, so the interest in this franchise and in your work has not gone away. It is an evergreen piece of art that, in many cases, is more relevant now today than when it was when it came out, you know, in terms of the questions that it asks, in terms of making us question who we are and what our potential can be as individuals and where our place, frankly, is in the universe. And your work has changed my life. And it means a great deal to me to be able to sit down with you and talk with you about it.
Well, I've had a lot of fun, and I'm so excited that your podcast has been blowing up. And I hope to see it keep growing. But, you know, I think the thing is why your podcast is doing so well is kind of what I think has been the reason that I've been able to have success, is that I actually really like the stuff I make. And that passion becomes infectious. And I think your passion is infectious. And that's why when people see this, it's genuine, and it's not just something the studio is paid for to promote their work. It's actual passion. It's actual love. And nothing is more infectious than that.
Well, I appreciate you, sir, and I do appreciate you taking the time. And you know, we're just getting started here, and I think that there's still a lot left to do. And I'd love to have you back on in 2021.
You got it.
Thank you so very much. You be well and take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Dean Devlin, everyone. My word. I'm over the moon right now. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for everyone for sticking around. This has been this interview here was one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast to begin with. And when he said yes, I was like, well, I mean, we're going to go to town on this one. And thank you again, Dean, for that. So, fan art. I love this piece. I saw it on the internet and I said, I've got to reach out to the artist because I want it for my show. Kyger Nico. She says, I made this piece because every time I feel uneasy, I like painting in a Chinese and Japanese art style. They're simple in composition and relaxing to create. Every brushstroke has character. For this one, the reason was the same, and after seeing many fans ask for Stargate back, I wanted to challenge myself by creating a fan art piece in a style I have so much fun with. The style of the show didn't match my painting style, but that was the challenge I liked trying out. To make them match and give off the same vibe as the times SG-1 goes through the gate to a foreign planet. Everything feels foreign to not only them, but for the watchers as well. And if you notice, the symbols in the painting are the symbols to Earth to match the style. Thank you, Kyger, for submitting this. And you can submit your own original art, make sure it's yours, at dialthegateshow@gmail.com. Kyger, I will also be putting a link to her store where you can buy a copy of this print after the show. So give me just a minute here, and I will update that link to the to Kyger's store as well. Okay, to business on a couple of things before I let you guys know. We are in beginnings of week 3 of this project, and it's becoming very evident to me very quickly that there needs to be a little bit more in place moving forward. Someone commented in the threads in one of the YouTube feeds. They said you need to use the YouTube marker tool and put in markers where there are specific moments. I don't have time for that, unfortunately. And the next answer is, well, find someone who does. I mean, I can't allow control to that content because that's specifically the YouTube side of things I need control of. However, I have registered dialthegatearchive.com. And with dialthegatearchive.com, I am going to need archivists. I need at least 2 or 3. A web dev. I need someone who has experience in wikis. And we are going to take each episode of Stargate and give it a landing page. And each episode of Dial the Gate and the episodes that come and give them a landing page. And so when Joe Flanagan talks about Rising and talks about the shooting the big gun at the Wraith darts, we will then have on Stargate on dialthegatearchive.com a list of all of the specific talking points from each podcast, and you'll have on the landing page for Joe's interview. Joe Flanagan, Joe talks about shooting gun in Rising. Link. And it will be the YouTube time code where he talks about that. Also, in the Rising listing for the episode, it will be copied there as well. And in the Rising listing for Rising Parts 1 and 2, it will have every beat from Dial the Gate where everyone has ever mentioned or brought up that episode. Martin Wood, we're going to be having the director on, so his comments will be broken down based on topic and links so that you can go and watch it. That's what makes Dial the Gate a true oral history. I'm not going to worry about transcribing. I'm convinced that in the next 15 to 20 years, YouTube will have an algorithm that will transcribe perfectly, and you just have to go in and touch it up here and there. It will be perfect and flawless in just a few years. Right now, it's a mess, and I'm not going to have anyone sit down and do that unless they really like pain and you're out there somewhere. Then reach out to me at dialthegateshow@gmail.com. But anyway, that's the intent. So that's the new call to action right now. I'm looking for someone who is going to be interested in helping me build that wiki. I can't ask one person to do it. We have too many shows every weekend, sometimes 2 and 3. 2 will probably be the norm. 3 will be excessive. 4 is butt kicking, and I will likely not do that ever again, but it was our launch weekend. And then be able to go through it and say, not things like, does Joe prefer coffee? I mean, maybe perhaps on the coffee or tea. Maybe on the Joe Flanagan interview landing page, it may link to that. But I'm not looking for every single exchange, but the ones that are historically relevant to Stargate. I want people to be able to go and look them up in the Dial the Gate episode, and also be able to, after hundreds of episodes, go to The Fifth Man in season 5 of SG1 and read about those experiences for that episode, and be able to link to the specific Dial the Gate episodes and that time code that talked about them. So it becomes a true oral history. Does any of that make sense? Anyway, if you want to contribute to that, if you have the technical expertise, please hit me up, because God knows I don't. All right, call to action. If you like what you've seen in this episode, I would appreciate if you'd click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. If you plan to watch live, I recommend giving the bell icon a click, so you'll be the first to know of any schedule changes, which will probably happen all the time, as it's already happened to us at least once. Bear in mind, clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. The clips are designed to relay specific moments from the show, and Dean's episode will be chock full of them. So if you've been watching the channel, I didn't put any out. This past week, I was in Costa Mesa, California, hanging with these lovely people right here. But we will be doing that. I will be getting into that rhythm again pretty soon here. Thank you again to Dean. Thank you to my moderators, Tracy, Keith, Ian Summer. You guys, I couldn't do this without you. Andy Frizzell and Rob Cooper questions. So both Andy Frizzell and Rob Cooper are going to be released on Halloween, but they are pre-taped this coming week. I am recording Andy Frizzell, the Wraith Queen, on Tuesday, October the 20th. If you have questions for Andy, go to dialthegate.com, not on your mobile device, but on a desktop or laptop, and go to the bottom and submit a question to Andy Frizzell by October the 19th. By Rob Cooper, I need them for Rob Cooper, executive producer and writer of SG1 Atlantis and Universe. I need his questions by October 21. He and I are filming on the 22nd. So those are the dates. The 19th for Andy and the 21st for Robert C. Cooper. That is pretty much all I've got for this episode. Tomorrow, we have a huge episode that will not include me blabbing for most of it. In fact, I'm going to be barely in it. I'm going to be watching with the rest of you in the YouTube chat, and I will have the opening and the ending while we watch David Hewlett, Alexis Cruz, David Blue, Julie McNiven, Rainbow Sun Franks, and Simone Bailey. I can't believe I got them all. Yes. go through a simulated mission of the Stargate SG-1 role-playing game. The Stargate RPG has been doing its Kickstarter now for the past several days. They've hit milestone after milestone. Still a long way to go to some of the stretch goals, and I know what a couple of the stretch goals are, and we need to really unlock those. But tomorrow at, is it 2 p.m.? I don't even know what time my own show is. 2 p.m. Pacific time, that role-playing game with the 6 Stargate actors and a game master and 2 of the folks from Wyvern are going to be in real time, and it is going to be a hoot. I know for a fact David Hewlett has been practicing, so he's probably going to blow us all away. But yes, that's tomorrow, so I hope to see you all back here at 2 p.m. Pacific time for that program. Thanks again to Dean Devlin, and thank you all for watching the program and making it a part of your weekend, or if you're time shifting later on in the week. I cannot believe that we are already at 2,000 subscribers. That says to me that this thing is working, and that there are Stargate fans out there yet who are hungry for this new content. A lot of them are discovering it on the streaming services for the first time, and we are grateful that you're with us, and we're grateful that you have found the show. That's all I've got. We'll be back tomorrow for a 2.5, 3-hour gaming session, so stay tuned. I am David Reed for Dial the Gate. I'll see you on the other side.